and be happy and go forth. So my sisters and I were overwhelmed with the most beautiful flowers, gifts, cards, letters, and prayers from all over the world, all over the world. We all felt comforted in knowing Mommy had touched so many people by just being herself. The hospital staff was likewise wonderful. All the nurses, doctors, aides, and orderlies embraced us like family and supported us through the entire ordeal. You remember, right? That's right. It was really amazing. Even an unknown police officer reached out. One night, we had a big scare. Mommy seemed to be fading, and one of the doctors who lived on Long Island was paged. As he raced back to the hospital, he was pulled over for speeding by a police officer. When he explained whose doctor he was and why he was moving so fast, the police officer provided an escort all the way to the hospital. Other police officers volunteered to provide security for us. And sitting with Mommy in this hospital room one day, I said, Mommy, there are people who jump up and down and say, look at me, look at what I've done. But by just being yourself, you've drawn people close to you. Your efforts and humane deeds are being recognized all over the world, and I'm so proud to be your daughter. You've set the best examples for us. And I know that whatever my mother did, she did from the heart, and I believe that that is God's most gracious blessing. Thank you very much.
Okay. Stand by the side. I know you have some questions for Ilyasah, and we have asked our secretary of the Bethune-Du Bois Institute, Ophir Dukes, to please come up, and he will entertain those questions. He's going to tell you the 1-minute question timeline, but I want to say something about Ophir Dukes, because Ophir Dukes... Yeah, but I have to introduce you, sir. We are so proud of our secretary and my dear friend because he not only serves as our secretary, but he just recently made history when he was the recipient of the winner of the Gold Anvil Award, which is the highest individual honor of the nation's Public Relations Society of America. He is it 40 years old? 40 years old? 50. It's a 50-year-old organization, and he was the first African American to receive it. There's another honor. There's another honor that I want to let you know about how he serves women and why we are going to do something special for him, we women of the Congress. Kathy Hughes. Everybody knows Kathy Hughes? Okay. Well, when she wanted to start her little station there with the window on the corner, she went to him. And he provided whatever she needed financially to start it. Whenever you women have problems, he's available now. And if you need any, he will answer. He will be a brother to you. I mean that. And because of his brotherly love for myself and for Kathy Hughes and others, I can name them all, she named a building in Detroit, which is a multi-story building, isn't it? It's a big commercial building. She named the building of the Radio 1 in his honor. And it's called the Ophir Dukes Building. And I think, how many stations are in there? And there are 3 stations already in there and others to come. But this is the gentleman that's going to answer your question. And he also has his own firm, which is about 25 or 35 years old, Ophir Dukes and Associates. And he also founded the Black Society of Public Relations. What's its official name?
The Black Public Relations Society.
The Black Public Relations Society. He pulled that together, and that's doing a wonderful work to get our message out. We sure needed to get our message, don't we? All right. Thank you, Ophir, for all you've done. And now the questions, please take charge.
This is Miss Shabazz night, not mine. So let us facilitate the asking of questions by having you to stand, to speak clearly and briefly, and make sure that you are asking a question and not making a statement. Fair enough? Okay. First question. Joe, look as if you have a question.
No.
Okay.
Do you have any other book projects in mind?
Yes, because before I wrote Growing Up X, I was working on a book about my parents. And I said, and in doing that, the editor at that time, Anita Diggs, had encouraged me to write Growing Up X. So now that I finished Growing Up X, and Growing Up X is a coming-of-age memoir. It is not a biography. Of course, I'm not old enough to write a biography. And but it's a coming-of-age memoir. And now I'm really happy to be working on this book about my parents, because now I learn more about them. And I found a picture of my mother when she was 8 years old, so that was very exciting. Yeah. Please don't ask me one of those complicated questions, Mr. Bailey. Good Lord. Okay, yes.
No, I just wanted to ask, what was it like when you first read the autobiography of your father? What were your feelings and when you read, you said in the book that you learned a lot about your father from reading the autobiography.
Right.
I'd just like to know, what was it like?
Well, I read the autobiography. Well, I used to play with the autobiography with my 3 younger sisters, and we used to pass the book around and look at different pictures, and we didn't know one of the pictures were my father, and so I would tell them that's the man who was mean to Daddy, and we'd pass the book around, and it turned out to be my father. But when I got older, well, when I went to college, I was 16 years old, and I read the autobiography again there. Now, with a new, being mature, thinking I, was a little grown, and of course, then, now that I had experienced the social, issues, with men and women, with sisters, the expectations of others, and now reading about my father, and, experiencing some men, and now reading about my father, I was just really blown away, because I tried reading it from the perspective of him just being Malcolm X and not my father, and trying to understand the man. And, I saw a young man who had really worked so hard and contributed so much. And, it was just work. And he was very compassionate about what he was doing. And that was, for humanity, seeking truth and justice. And however, whatever it took to get that truth, to find the truth and justice. And seeing him being so, such a servant, to God. He was serving God. And then listening to the other things I started hearing about, people saying about Malcolm X being this hate maniac and, saying all these terrible things, I felt a sense of betrayal, and just so many things. So it was a very emotional experience for me, very, very emotional. And of course, I really, really came to just admire and respect this man. And I was very, very happy and proud that he was my father. But then I wondered, oh, Lord, now these people, what do they expect of me? How can I now step into some of these shoes? But then as an adult, I found out I don't have to step into shoes, because people aren't the judges, God's the judge. So, and I think not until we understand that as children of parents who contribute, whether they're medical doctors, attorneys, congressional figures, whatever, politicians, that not until they realize that you don't have to live, for other people's expectations, but that it's just God that matters. And if you're good inside and doing the right thing, Yes, is there another question?
There's a question over here. You want to stand up?
I'm from Alberta, New York, and worked with your mother when she was the director of the YMED program.
Young Mothers Educational Development, right?
Yes, I knew her very well. And one of the concerns that I've always had was whether or not you mentioned your relationship in your book with other relatives, like your uncles, your father's brothers, other family members. Are they mentioned in your book?
Absolutely. But
what was your relationship?
Well, growing, we weren't really, my uncle Wilford, the oldest son, came to see us when I was very young. And I talk about that in the book. It was a very emotional experience for me. But what I found out from my cousin is that when my father was assassinated, the family was told, you better not, my father's family, no connection with them, and if you do, we're going to kill you. And of course, even in the Nation of Islam, they were forbidden to say my father's name. So, now we're very close, and they're very beautiful, loving, peaceful, just great people. Right? And so that Malcolm, he was genuine love. It wasn't all this, stuff that J. Edgar Hoover, put out there. And if we want to believe J. Edgar Hoover over Malcolm, right?
Yes, I wanted to ask you, what was the hardest thing about writing the book, first of all? And then the second thing would be, how long did it take you actually to write it, then go through the editing process, and then finally get it published?
Well, I already had, I had this book that I was doing already with One World Ballantine, the same people that did my father's autobiography. And again, that book is about my parents. And while doing that book, she encouraged me to do Growing Up X. Growing Up X was not very difficult for me to do because I'd always kept a journal. I always wrote. Because it was my way of expressing myself. I knew I was a little frightened to express myself around people because I thought they'd, have all these expectations. Oh, my gosh. But so it really wasn't very hard for me to do. And so I would say it probably took us a little under a year. Yeah. And what was your first question? Was that was... What
was the hardest thing about it?
The hardest thing was writing about my mother, losing her.
Right. Okay, you want to stand up?
Two questions. Well, I read your book. I thought you did an excellent job and appreciate that part of history. In the book, though, you mentioned that you all did not discuss your father's death or the impact, as if the grief, you all did not discuss the grief until your 20s or so.
My mother didn't discuss it, and I know that it was something, it was... that was really something for her. Again, you imagine she was in her 20s, And I talk about my mother's childhood, and then having a Malcolm as a husband, and having to experience the FBI, the CIA, all of the harassment, the Nation of Islam, and then witnessing her husband's, and then her children, the home being firebombed. So now you realize, well, man, these people want to kill my children too. They're, just ruthless. And so then seeing her husband assassinated. So I think it was just really too much for her to go back there. And she tried to focus on the good. She needed to survive to take care of her children and her husband because we were the most people, the most important people to her. And it was just something we never discussed.
Okay, there's a question here and then back there. Yes.
My name is Malik. And first of all, I'd like to say, sister, it's a blessing and a pleasure to meet you. Malcolm was the black prince that really got me to understand that if I didn't stand for something, that I'd fall for anything. And I didn't get a chance to meet Malcolm. I didn't get a chance to meet Sister Betty, but I'm glad that I got a chance to meet you. Just want to ask you a question. When you were young and when you were growing up, being the daughter of Malcolm, going to school, hanging out, what was the environment around people and you in that intermingle being Malcolm X's daughter?
Well, I went to my mother sent us to private schools, and where I went to school, some of my sisters went to the United Nations International School, and my mother worked very hard to send her 6 girls. She looked for the best education. Some people say, well, why did your mother send you to school with white people? She didn't look to send us to school with white people. It just so happened that these schools, some of the best schools in the country, there were a lot of white children that attended. And, I don't know why people are so surprised to find that out. And so I went to school with Yejin Moon, who was, what's his name? Sun Yat-moon's daughter, Reverend Sun Yat-moon, and Forbes, Malcolm Forbes, and, people like that. And so everyone's parents did something. And so no one was saying, oh, that's Malcolm X's daughter. I never felt uncomfortable. In fact, when I went to which I talk about, some of my friends' homes, their parents, mostly fathers, would bring me in their study and tell me how great my father was, how great of a man he was. But it wasn't until I went to college that I experienced, you know, all of that, just all the stuff, you know, that's real, you know, part of life. And, you know, so it was what it was. Yeah.
Okay. There's a question back there, and then we'll come to you.